My dad drained $40,000 from my wedding fund through our joint account. Said, "Your wedding isn't going anywhere. This family has real problems right now." Months later, I found the bank trail. Every dollar went to my brother's honeymoon. When I showed up with transfer records, Mom said it was just money. So I handed her a letter from my lawyer. "My name is Joel. I'm 29. I'm a civil engineer, which is a job that pays well enough to save $43,000 over 11 years if you're disciplined about it." And I was. I was disciplined about a lot of things. Trusting my father was one of them. That turned out to be the expensive one. This is a story about 3 envelopes. The first one made me confused. The second one made me sick. The third one I handed to my mother across a kitchen table while my father stood by the refrigerator pretending to look for something he wasn't looking for. Every envelope changed what I understood about my family. The third one changed what my family understood about me. When I was 18, my father took me to a bank. Warren Calloway. Big hands, quiet voice. The kind of dad who communicated through actions more than words and whose actions, at the time, all pointed in the direction of love. He sat next to me while a banker in a blue tie explained what a joint savings account was. I signed. He signed. He put his hand on my shoulder when we walked out and said, "This is how you build a future, Joel. One deposit at a time. First deposit, $200. Birthday money from my grandmother, who died 2 years later and never got to see what that account would become, or what would happen to it. I deposited into that account for 11 years. Summer job money, college work-study checks, my first engineering salary, raises, bonuses. I watched the number climb the way you watch a garden you planted, slow and steady and satisfying in a way that doesn't need to be loud. By the time I was 28 and engaged to a woman named Megan who teaches 4th grade and once made me pull over on a highway because she saw a box turtle trying to cross, that account had $43,000 in it. That was the wedding fund. That was 3 years of Megan and I planning something we'd talk about on Sunday mornings over coffee. The venue, the flowers, whether her college roommate could sing or whether we should gently discourage that. It was real. It was ours. It was in a bank account with my name and my father's name on it, because that's how it started when I was 18 and didn't know that a second name on an account is the same as a second key to a lock. I have a brother named Kyle. He's 32, 3 years older. Kyle is the kind of person who enters a room and the room rearranges itself around him. Not because he demands it, because people want to. He's funny. He's warm. He takes up space in a way that feels generous instead of selfish. And if you met him at a party, you'd like him before your drink was half empty. Our parents, Warren and Connie, loved us both. But they loved Kyle first. Not in a cruel way. In the way that the sun hits one side of a house more than the other, and nobody planned it that way, but one side gets all the light, and the other side learns to grow in the shade. When I was 11, I had a fever that lasted 3 days. 103. Connie was at work. Warren was at work. Kyle, who was 14 and technically in charge, carried the TV from the living room into my bedroom because I said I was bored. It was a tube TV. Heavy. He dropped it on his foot and said a word I'd never heard before, then set it up on my dresser and watched cartoons with me until I fell asleep. He brought me soup that was technically just hot water with crackers dissolved in it, because he couldn't cook, but it was warm and he'd made it, and I felt taken care of. That's the Kyle I grew up with. That's the version I kept expecting to show up long after he stopped being that person. The favoritism wasn't dramatic. It was structural. Kyle got a car at 17. I got a bus pass at 17, and the car 2 years later when Kyle had already scratched the bumper badly enough that it needed a $900 repair Warren paid for without blinking. Kyle's college was funded without discussion. My college was funded with the phrase, "We'll help where we can," which turned out to mean 60% tuition and the rest in loans I paid off at 26. Kyle's apartment deposit was covered by Warren. My apartment deposit was covered by the joint account I'd been filling since I was 18 with money I earned myself. None of this was cruelty. It was gravity. Money flowed toward Kyle the way water flows downhill, naturally, without anyone deciding it should. Kyle got married 6 months before everything fell apart. Quick courthouse wedding because his wife Dana was pregnant and they wanted to do the right thing, which in Kyle's case meant a ceremony that cost less than a nice dinner and a reception at my parents' house with folding chairs and a Costco cake. It was sweet, actually. I gave a toast. I meant every word. What I didn't know was that the wedding was cheap because the honeymoon wouldn't be. The first envelope came from the bank. Standard monthly statement. I almost didn't open it because I'd been getting them for 11 years, and the number always went up. That's what happens when you deposit and don't withdraw. Math. Except this time the math was wrong. Balance. $3,012.14. I was sitting at my kitchen table. Megan was in the other room grading papers. I could hear her pen scratching, the specific sound of a teacher writing "great job" on a worksheet, which she does even when the job isn't great because she believes in encouragement and she's a better person than I am. I read the number again. $3,012.14. There should have been a 4 in front of that 3. There should have been $43,000 in that account, give or take. I called the bank. The automated system put me through to a representative who put me through to another representative who put me through to Sandra, the branch manager, a woman I'd seen behind the counter for years, the kind of person who wears reading glasses on a chain and has a photo of a golden retriever on her desk that she talks to sometimes when she thinks nobody is looking. Sandra pulled the records. There was a withdrawal. $40,000. Authorized by the joint account holder. My father, Warren Calloway. Dated 4 months ago. For months. The money had been gone for 4 months, and I didn't know because I'd stopped checking monthly, because the number always went up, because I trusted the system, because my father was part of the system, because he sat next to me when I was 18 and said, "This is how you build a future." I called Warren. He picked up on the third ring. I could hear a baseball game in the background. "Dad, there's $3,000 in the account." Silence. Then, "Joel, I was going to talk to you about that. Where's the money? Your wedding isn't going anywhere. This family has real problems right now. I needed to handle something." "Handle what?" "Family stuff. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it." He said, "Don't worry about it," in the same voice he used when I was 12 and the power went out during a storm. Calm. Fatherly. Certain. And I did what I'd been trained to do for 29 years. I believed him. I assumed medical bills. I assumed debt. I assumed something real and urgent and forgivable. I hung up and told Megan we might need to push the wedding timeline back a few months because of a family situation. She said, "Is everyone okay?" I said, "I think so." That was a lie, but I didn't know it yet. For months of nothing. For months of Warren saying, "I'm handling it," when I asked. For months of Megan gently not asking about the wedding budget because she could tell I was stressed, and she's the kind of person who gives space instead of taking it. 4 months of me checking the account online every Sunday night, watching the balance sit at $3,012.14 like a clock that stopped and nobody would tell me why. The weight of it sat in specific places. In the pause before I answered when Megan's mother asked about venue options. In the way I'd open the banking app, see the number, close it, and stare at the ceiling for a while. In the conversation I had with Megan on a Wednesday night where she said, "Joel, are we still getting married?" And I said, "Of course we are." And the silence after that lasted longer than it should have, because she heard something in my voice that wasn't certainty, and she's too smart to pretend she didn't. I almost lost her in those 4 months. Not dramatically, not with a fight or an ultimatum. In the slow, quiet way you lose someone when you stop sharing the thing that's eating you. She could feel me pulling inward. She didn't know why. She assumed it was her. It wasn't. It was a number on a screen that should have been 5 digits and was 4. I mowed the lawn. I went to work. I designed drainage systems for municipal projects, which is a job that requires you to think about where water goes when nobody's watching it, which turns out to be a useful metaphor for thinking about where money goes when nobody's watching it. Except I wasn't thinking about it yet because I still trusted my father. Megan's birthday was in there somewhere. We went to a Thai place she likes. I paid with a credit card because the account I'd been saving in for 11 years had $3,000 in it, and I couldn't explain why without explaining something I didn't understand yet. She ordered the pad CEW. I ordered something I don't remember. The waiter sang happy birthday in Thai, which made her laugh so hard she snorted, which made me love her more than I did yesterday, which is how it works with Megan. Incremental. Steady. The opposite of what was happening in that bank account. The second envelope is the one that changed everything. I went back to the bank. In person. I told Sandra I wanted complete transfer records for the $40,000 withdrawal. Where it went. Every dollar. Sandra, who has been managing accounts at that branch for 14 years and has seen every kind of family financial disaster you can imagine, pulled me into her office. She closed the door. There was a half-eaten granola bar on her desk next to the golden retriever photo. She pushed it aside without acknowledging it. Joel, I need to tell you something before I print these. When your father came in to make this withdrawal, I asked him directly if you were aware. He said yes. I made a note in the file. She opened a folder and showed me. Handwritten note, her initials, dated the day of the withdrawal. Asked joint holder W. Calloway if secondary holder was aware. W. Calloway confirmed yes. He lied to the bank manager. To her face. While she was doing her job, he looked at Sandra and told her I knew. And she wrote it down because she's thorough and because something about a $40,000 withdrawal from a 29-year-old's wedding fund made her ask the question that nobody else asked. She printed the transfer records, handed them to me in a manila envelope. I didn't open it in the bank. I drove to a parking lot behind a grocery store and opened it sitting in my truck with the engine off and the windows fogging because it was October and the heat wasn't on because I forgot to turn it on because my hands were busy holding paper. The $40,000 went to a travel agency. Coastal Luxury Travel. 6 separate payments over 5 weeks. Not a lump sum. Installments. The first payment was for flights. Business class. 2 passengers. The second was a resort. 5-star. Santorini, Greece. The third was private tours. A boat charter. Wine tastings. A sunset dinner at a cliffside restaurant that cost $420 for 2 people. My father built a honeymoon. Piece by piece. Payment by payment. He designed it the way I designed drainage systems, with precision and intention and a clear plan for where every dollar would flow. Except the dollars were mine. I sat in the truck for a long time. The grocery store closed while I was sitting there. Someone came out and started collecting shopping carts, a teenager in a red vest who clearly did not want to be collecting shopping carts at 9 p.m. on a Thursday, and I watched him stack them into a row with the focused indifference of a person being paid minimum wage to care about cart alignment. The metal wheels clattered across the asphalt, and it was the only sound in the world besides my own breathing, which had gotten louder without me noticing, the kind of breathing you do when your body is processing something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. Then I opened my phone. I opened Instagram. I searched Dana's account, Kyle's wife, public account, and there it was. 47 photos from Santorini. Sunset dinners on a terrace overlooking water so blue it looked fake. Champagne on a balcony with the caldera glowing orange behind them. A yacht with a Greek flag on the back and Dana in a sundress leaning over the railing. A 5-star hotel room with white sheets and blue water visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. She tagged the resort. She tagged the airline. She tagged the tour company. She tagged the restaurant where they had the $420 dinner. And in the photo, Kyle is raising a glass with a smile I've seen 100 times. The smile that makes rooms rearrange, except this time the room cost $8,400 and I paid for it without knowing. I screenshot every photo, printed them the next day at a FedEx, put them side by side with the bank transfers. A sunset dinner next to a $2,800 withdrawal, a yacht photo next to a $4,500 transfer, a champagne toast next to a $1,200 charge. My wedding fund, photographed from every angle, in 47 Instagram posts with heart emojis and the caption, "Best 3 weeks of our lives." Part of me wanted to call Warren and scream until my voice cracked and the neighbors heard. Part of me wanted to drive to Kyle's apartment and throw the envelope through his window and watch it scatter across his living room floor. And a small part of me, the part that I sat with the longest in that parking lot while the shopping carts clattered and the teenager in the red vest finished his shift and drove away in a car older than he was, wanted to close the envelope, drive home, and pretend I never opened it. Because not knowing felt simpler. Because the version of Warren who sat next to me at 18 and said, "This is how you build a future," was still alive as long as I didn't look at what he'd done with it. Because part of me still wanted my dad. Not the man who stole $40,000. The one who carried me on his shoulders at a county fair when I was 5 and the crowd was too tall for me to see the fireworks. But I'd already looked. That's the thing about envelopes. Once you open them, you can't put the contents back. I also found something else that night. 2 days before the withdrawal, Warren's browser history, which Megan helped me access through the family computer's cloud backup because she works in IT on the side for her school district and understands data recovery better than she understands why I didn't check the account sooner, showed a search, can joint account holder withdraw without other person knowing. He Googled it. He sat at his computer, in the office where he keeps his baseball cards and the photo of Kyle's graduation that's bigger than the photo of mine, and he typed that question into a search bar. Read the answer. Checked the legal loophole. Then used it. He didn't steal impulsively. He researched the mechanics of the theft first. The way I research drainage flow rates. Methodically. With intent. And the timing. The bank records show the first withdrawal happened at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. I pulled Kyle's phone records through Megan. Long story, she has skills. At 11:14 a.m. that same day, Dana texted Warren a link to the Santorini resort package. 3 hours and 16 minutes between "this looks nice" and "I'll take it from Joel's wedding fund." 3 hours. That's how long my father deliberated before stealing $40,000 from his son. Less time than it takes to watch a baseball game, which is what he was watching when I called him about the balance. One more thing about that second envelope. While pulling records, I discovered that Connie, my mother, withdrew $6,000 from her own retirement account during the same period. She added it to the honeymoon budget on top of my $40,000. She didn't just know about the theft. She supplemented it. She wanted Kyle's honeymoon to be perfect badly enough to drain her retirement and her other son's future simultaneously. My mother wasn't a bystander. She was a co-investor. I called Nate. Nate Reeves. We went to college together. He's a real estate attorney who doesn't normally handle family financial disputes. But when I drove to his office on a Saturday and put the transfer records, the Instagram screenshots, Sandra's internal note, and the browser history printout on his desk, he leaned back in his chair, which creaked because Nate buys furniture at thrift stores even though he makes good money because he says expensive chairs are a scam perpetuated by the lumber industry. And he said, "This isn't a family dispute, Joel. This is conversion of funds. And it's one of the cleanest paper trails I've ever seen." He wrote the letter for free, addressed it to Mr. and Mrs. Warren Calloway. Professional letterhead. His full title and bar number. The letter demanded repayment of $40,000 plus interest calculated from the date of withdrawal within 90 days. It stated that failure to comply would result in a civil suit filed in county court with the transfer records, the Instagram evidence, and Sandra's documented note as exhibits. It mentioned that the note would be subpoenaed. It mentioned that any counterclaims of authorization would be contradicted by the documented evidence that Warren lied to a bank employee about my awareness. Nate signed it, put it in a white envelope, and said, "The family has met me at barbecues. They know this isn't a bluff." That's envelope 3. The night before I drove to my parents' house, Megan sat on the edge of our bed while I packed the 3 envelopes into a folder. She was quiet for a while. Then she said something that I think about more than anything else that happened in this whole story. "If you don't do this, I need to know that. Not because I'll leave. Because I need to understand what we're building. I can't marry into a family that takes from us and calls it love. I need to know you'll protect what's ours." She wasn't threatening. She was being honest. And it was the thing that got me off the couch and into the truck the next morning. I also did one more thing before the drive. I downloaded a recording app. My state is one-party consent. I pressed record before I walked through the front door. Not because I planned to use it in court. Because I wanted a record that couldn't be gaslit later. Because my family has a long history of rearranging conversations after the fact, and I wanted 14 minutes and 22 seconds of what was actually said by who. Sunday afternoon. October. Connie's house smells like the lemon cleaner she's used since I was a kid, the yellow bottle with the cracked cap she's never replaced. Warren is by the refrigerator when I walk in, pretending to look for something. Connie is at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she's not drinking. They know something is coming. They just don't know what shape it is. I sat down across from my mother. Put the folder on the table. Opened it. Envelope 1. The bank statement. I slid it across the table. This is the account balance 4 months after Dad withdrew $40,000 from my wedding fund. $3,012.14. Connie looked at it. Looked at Warren. Warren didn't move from the refrigerator. Envelope 2. The transfer records and Instagram screenshots. I spread them across the table like a hand of cards. Each transfer next to the corresponding Instagram photo. Sunset dinner, $2,800. Yacht day, for $1,500. Resort confirmation, $8,400. Flight itinerary, business class, $6,200 for 2. Every dollar went to coastal luxury travel. Every charge matches Kyle and Dana's honeymoon. I have the bank manager's signed note confirming Dad lied to her face when she asked if I was aware. Warren's first words weren't, "I'm sorry." They weren't, "Let me explain." They were, "Who told you to go digging through bank records?" Not remorse. Control. His first instinct when caught wasn't to apologize for stealing. It was to attack the investigation. That told me everything I'd spent for months waiting to understand. Connie looked at the photos. Looked at the numbers. She picked up the yacht photo and held it next to the transfer record. Then she put it down and said 5 words I'll hear for the rest of my life. "It was just money, Joel." She said it quietly, not with cruelty, with genuine belief. Then she followed it with, "Kyle needed it more. You have a good job. You'll save again. He's struggling. He's got a baby coming. We did what parents do." This is the same woman who packed my lunches until I was 14. Who put a note in my backpack the day I started high school that said, "You're going to do great. Come home and tell me everything." She meant it then. And she meant just money now. Both things are true about my mother, and I still can't make them fit in the same person. The transfer records also showed something I hadn't said yet. The final booking confirmation email from the travel agent was sent to Kyle's personal email address, not Warren's. Kyle knew Dad was funding the honeymoon. He might not have known the source, but he knew the arrangement. His defense of, "I didn't know where the money came from," was technically true the way a locked car is technically accessible if you have the key. He didn't ask because he didn't want to know. I opened envelope 3. The lawyer's letter. White paper. Professional letterhead. Nate's signature. I slid it across the table to Connie. She read it. Her hands were steady. Then they weren't. She put the letter down and looked at Warren. Warren finally left the refrigerator. Sat down. Read it standing. Actually, leaning over the table, both palms flat on the wood. "Can we just handle this between us?" he said. "I'll pay you back. But not like this. Not with lawyers. You had 4 months to handle this between us. You spent them watching baseball and telling me not to worry. I'll give you $20,000 now. The rest over time." "The letter says 90 days, Dad. That's the timeline." He stood up straight, crossed his arms. The baseball game posture was gone. He looked like a man standing in a building he suddenly realized wasn't his. I stopped the recording at 14 minutes and 22 seconds. Picked up my folder. Walked out the front door. Drove home. Megan was on the couch with a blanket and a book she wasn't reading. I sat next to her. She put her hand on my arm. We sat there for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, which is a sound I've never noticed before and now I can't stop hearing. 2 days later, Connie called Nate's office. Tried to clear up a misunderstanding with the receptionist. Nate called me that afternoon. "Your mother just tried to negotiate directly with my office. I told her all communication goes through me. She was not pleased." That's Connie. When the front door closes, she tries the side window. When the system says no, she looks for a person who might say yes. She tried it on Nate the way she tries it on everyone. It didn't work because Nate isn't family and isn't impressed by the voice she uses when she wants something. 2 weeks after the kitchen table, Dana found out. I don't know exactly how. Either she pieced it together or someone told her. She confronted Kyle. Kyle admitted Warren funded the honeymoon, but insisted he didn't know it was Joel's money. Dana said, "You didn't ask." That's the same thing. She packed a bag and took the baby to her mother's house. The honeymoon that was supposed to celebrate their marriage became the thing that cracked it open. $40,000 and 47 Instagram photos and a yacht with a Greek flag. And the whole thing was built on money that belonged to the brother who gave a toast at their wedding. Kyle called me. I was at work, eating a turkey sandwich at my desk, reviewing a stormwater capacity report for a subdivision on the east side of town. His name on my phone screen. I picked up. "You destroyed my marriage, Joel." I took a bite of the sandwich. Chewed. Swallowed. Then I said, "I didn't book the trip, Kyle." He hung up. I finished the sandwich. Went back to the stormwater report. The numbers made sense. They always make sense when they're about water instead of family. Uncle Martin called me a week later. Warren's brother. A retired shop teacher who drives a truck with 190,000 miles on it and considers that a point of pride, who once showed me how to use a lathe when I was 13 and said, "Everything worth building takes patience and a level," which is the most shop teacher sentence ever spoken. Martin said, "Your father asked me for $15,000 3 months ago. Told me it was for your wedding expenses. Catering. Venue deposit. I sent it because I thought I was helping you, Joel. I did not receive $15,000 from Uncle Martin." I did not know Martin had been asked. Warren used my wedding as a fundraising pitch to extract money from his own brother. He told Martin the money was for my future while using my actual future to fund Kyle's past. Martin was more than furious. Martin was hurt. His voice on the phone sounded like someone had taken a tool he trusted and used it wrong. Martin called Connie. Connie denied it. Martin called Warren. Warren didn't pick up. Martin called me back and said, "I'm coming to your wedding. Wherever it is. Whatever it looks like. I'm coming." He was the first person on my side of the family to say that. The family cracked like a plate dropped on tile. Martin and his wife, Aunt Carol, cut contact with Warren and Connie. Carol called Connie and said, "You told us that money was for the wedding. You lied to your own family to fund a vacation." Two cousins who'd heard the story through the family grapevine called me individually. One cried. One was angry. Both asked if I was okay. None of them called Warren. A month after the letter, Warren went to the emergency room. Chest pains. Connie called me. "Your father is in the hospital because of what you're doing to this family." I called the hospital directly. Warren was evaluated and released the same day. No cardiac event. Observation only. Connie had weaponized a hospital visit the way she weaponizes everything, by turning it into a guilt delivery system with a return address of "your fault." Day 87 of a 90-day deadline. 3 days to spare. Warren signed a home equity loan for $40,000 plus interest. The house that he and Connie have lived in for 34 years. The house where I grew up, where I learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where Kyle carried a tube TV into my bedroom when I had a fever, where Connie made pancakes on Saturday mornings shaped like animals that looked nothing like animals, but we ate them anyway. That house now has a lien on it. Because my father stole from his son to send his other son to Santorini, and the only way to pay it back was to borrow against the walls that held us all together once. He handed me the check at the kitchen table. The same table. He didn't look at me. Connie was in the other room. I could hear her television. A game show. Somebody was winning something. The check was printed, not handwritten. Official. The bank's logo in the corner. The amount typed in neat font. $41,340. Principal plus interest. He slid it across the table the way I'd slid the lawyer's letter. Same table. Same direction. Different weight. I said, "Thank you." He didn't respond. I picked up the check. Walked out. Drove to the bank. Deposited it. Moved the money into a new account. One name on it. Megan and I got married at the county courthouse on a Wednesday in December. 11 people in the room. Uncle Martin drove 2 hours to be there. He wore a tie he'd clearly ironed himself because the crease was slightly off-center, and he kept touching it like it might escape. He stood in the back and cried during the vows, which surprised no one because Martin is the kind of man who cries at car insurance commercials and considers that a strength of character. Megan's parents, her sister, 2 of her college friends, and Nate, who stood by the door and took exactly one photo on his phone, slightly blurry, which is the most Nate thing imaginable. The ceremony cost $280. The officiant mispronounced my last name, and I didn't correct him because it didn't matter. Nothing about the pronunciation of Callaway mattered as much as the fact that Megan was standing in front of me, wearing a white dress she bought online for $140 that fit her like it was made by someone who had studied her shoulders and decided they were the most important part. I wore my grandfather's tie, the one with the small blue stripes that I found in a box after he died. The tie nobody else wanted and I kept because it smelled faintly like his closet, and that was enough reason. Dinner afterward at a restaurant where the chairs didn't match and the wine list was 1 page long. Martin insisted on buying a $34 bottle of something red because the groom shouldn't pay for his own wine. That's criminal. 11 people. No speeches. No cake. No centerpieces. No $420 sunset dinner on a terrace in Santorini. Megan laughed at something her sister said, and the sound filled the room the way expensive champagne never could. I sat at the end of the table and looked down the row of faces. Nobody here stole from me. Nobody here lied about where my money went. Nobody here booked a yacht with my future and called it love. We used the repaid money as a down payment on a house. Small, 2-bedroom, needs work. The front step has a crack that I've already measured twice because I can't stop thinking about how to fix it, which is how I process most things, by measuring them and making a plan. The yard needs mowing. The kitchen has a window that faces east and gets the kind of morning light that makes Megan stop whatever she's doing and just stand in it for a minute, holding her coffee, not talking. The house cost less than Kyle's honeymoon was worth per square foot. But nobody stole it. Nobody lied about it. Nobody Googled whether they were allowed to take it. The deed has 2 names on it. Both of them chose to be there. Kyle and Dana are separated. The honeymoon that was supposed to save a shaky marriage finished it instead. Dana sent me a message through Instagram. Short. She said, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." I believe her. I didn't respond. Not because I'm angry at her. Because there's nothing to say that would make either of us feel better. And sometimes silence is the most honest reply. Warren and Connie are still in the house. The house with the lien. The house with 15 years of payments left. Connie still watches game shows in the evening. Warren still watches baseball. They don't call me. I don't call them. I went to a bank last Tuesday. Not the old bank. A different one. New building. New counters. New smell. That specific clean paper and carpet smell that banks have when everything in them is new. I opened a savings account. The banker, a young guy with a pen he kept clicking, asked if I wanted to add anyone to the account. I said no. One name. One signatory. I signed the paperwork with a pen I brought from home because I'm the kind of person who brings his own pen to a bank, which Megan finds both endearing and slightly unhinged, and she's right about both. First deposit, $200. Same amount I deposited when I was 18. When my father sat next to me in a different bank, in a different chair, in a different life, and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "This is how you build a future, Joel. One deposit at a time." He was right about that part. He was wrong about who gets to spend it. If your family ever treated your savings like a shared wallet, I'd read that story. Drop it in the comments. Subscribe if you want more.